In the Heights is cinema. Since beginning writing it in 1999 to debuting on Broadway in 2008 and having multiple studios and directors attached to the project and having many delays and cancellations, In the Heights has finally come out in cinemas around the world in the last few weeks. I was very much anticipating this project, and so I cannot wait to discuss it in this video today. So I think without further ado, let's just begin the In the Heights review. Here we go.
Okay, so I just met Stephen Amell.
The cinematography of this movie was incredible.
Alright, now before I actually discuss the movie itself, I want to address the elephant in the room, and that is of course the controversy surrounding this movie regarding the casting. So yeah, let me just address this before I get to the review. So in case you don't know, what the controversy is all about is that there wasn't enough dark-skinned Latino and Latina representation in this movie because, you know, a large portion of the population in Washington Heights in the real world is actually more dark-skinned and light-skinned, I think. Don't quote me on that. But so there's been a lot of controversy surrounding, you know, they only casted light-skinned Latinas and Latinos. So where I stand on this is that, look, I'm obviously not Latina or Latino. I am a white Australian, so I feel like my position is kind of irrelevant. Lin-Manuel Miranda's apology wasn't for me, so it's not mine to accept, and I completely understand that. And so it's, you know, it's hard for me to defend Lin because, you know, I mean, I'm not the mediator here. I can't judge if it was a good decision or not because it's not my community being represented. It's kind of irrelevant to me. But I will say, and I know it's not my apology to accept, and I will repeat that many times because it is true. However, from everything I've seen regarding Lin-Manuel Miranda, both in interviews and online, everything, I know he's a good person and he has a good heart. Whether or not his execution was great, or whether or not, you know, it's a valid criticism, that's not up to me to decide. But all I know is that whatever happened, I don't think he intended to actually harm or offend some people. I don't think that's who he is at all. So don't say that he's racist or anything. Sure, he may have led to some racism being shown, however, he's not a bad person himself, and that's just all I'll say. I love Lin and I will love him till the day I die. He's one of my biggest idols. Yeah, that's my position on it, and I won't be addressing that further in this video because it is not up to me to make an opinion about it. But what I will judge in this video is the actual storytelling and the movie itself, not the casting and controversy surrounding that. So, but yeah, so that's just where I stand on that. But anyway, let's get into the actual review by kicking this video off by talking about. Alright, and the first thing in this category is the obvious, the incredible music, songs and dances throughout the entire movie. Look, you could say what you want about the actual storytelling itself. I have criticisms of the story, of which I will discuss later on in this video. However, you cannot deny that the music in this movie is absolutely incredible, and it just makes the movie what it is. It gives it the vibrant spirit, it gives you the perfect balance of like modern hip-hop and R&B, well not R&B, but modern hip-hop and Latina and Latino music. But you also get like that standard musical theater music. I'm not complaining, I love musical theater, but it just has the perfect balance of all these different genres, and the choreography as well is absolutely insane. Christopher Scott, the choreographer, is to be absolutely commended for his work in this movie. It is so great, and I actually love that they brought back the original dances from the Broadway musical into this movie. That was really awesome as well. It's just Lin-Manuel Miranda is an incredible genius. I mean, we all know this, but he's a musical genius, and the way he crafts his lyrics and the music, and Alex Lacamoire as well, his scoring is incredible. Just the music in general, it just makes the movie so much better than it would have been without it, and I think it's easily the strongest part of the movie for me. Some standouts of this music include In the Heights, Benny's Dispatch, Breathe, It Won't Be Long Now, 96,000, Piragua, When You're Home, and When the Sun Goes Down, aka the entire soundtrack, because this movie is, the music in the movie is insane. I love it so much. And along with this, the incredible visuals and choreography, which I talked about earlier, just, you know, you have to see this in a cinema screen, the largest screen possible, as Lin and John M. Chu have said many times, because the visuals, specifically in like When the Sun Goes Down, I got chills watching that in the cinema, and I was very grateful to be able to see it in the cinema because it's so where I am, and it was just insane. The visuals and cinematography is incredible in this movie. As well, there are some incredible, amazing actors who both encapsulate the original performers on Broadway's portrayal of these characters while also making it their own, and I think that was something while casting these characters they noticed is, like, for example, in It Won't Be Long Now, the actress who plays Vanessa, Melissa Barrera, I hope I pronounced that right, sounds very similar to Karen Olivier's performance in the Broadway musical. However, they also sound completely different at the same time. They are incredible. They did such a great job casting this movie. Every single character, whenever they're on screen, they brought something distinct to the project, and they just made it their own, and I loved it so much for that. They did a great job with the casting. And some standouts include Anthony Ramos, of course, legend, Leslie Grace, Melissa Barrera, I can't pronounce that name, I'm so sorry, and Corey Hawkins. In particular, I loved seeing Anthony Ramos stepping into the role that Lin originated on Broadway, and you get this interaction in Carnaval del Barrio. I'm terrible with pronunciations, I'm so sorry to anyone in the community I may be offending by doing the pronunciations, I'm so sorry. But you just see Lin on the balcony and Anthony down below, and they just look at each other, because it's like he's passing the mantle from what he once did onto Anthony, and I've been watching some interviews of Lin recently where he's saying, like, Anthony is Usnavi, and that he didn't know who Anthony was at the time, but he realized later on that he wrote this role for Anthony, as in he was born to play Usnavi. And I think that was incredible, and you saw that throughout the movie, that Anthony really had the charm, he had the charisma of Usnavi. He was very smart when he's rapping and stuff, but when he's like meeting Vanessa, he's like gets very anxious and stuff. And I think Anthony captured that character so well, and he's a great lead throughout this entire movie. Along with the actors, the characters themselves are so distinct, and they have such a great story throughout the movie. They really do feel like they all know each other, they have some great dynamics with each other, and the relationships throughout the movie, such as, you know, Sonny and Nina, Benny, Nina, Vanessa and Usnavi, all of them, they all just bounce off each other so well, and their actors obviously help this, but also the story and the creation of the characters themselves, both on Broadway and in this movie. The characters are the strongest part of the movie along with the music. They are core to what the musical is, and I think that is strong throughout the entire movie. As well, there are some amazing themes throughout the movie, with the obvious one being about dreams and destiny, and each character having a distinct like motivation or ambition that everything that happens to them in the movie relates to. Although sometimes they do really hit you on the head with this idea that everyone has their own dreams, and I think that could have been a little bit more subtle. But yeah, they did a great job, you know, making these characters have some drive and something to motivate them throughout the entire movie, you know, such as Usnavi wanting to move back to the Dominican Republic, and you have Nina wanting to go back to Stanford University, and she's dealing with the inner conflict of, should I be loyal to my parents and or at least my dad in this movie, and you know, go where he wants me to go, or should I stay with my family and Benny back at home? And she's dealing with this inner conflict. And like Vanessa, she wants to move to an apartment downtown, and like everyone has their own dreams and something that motivates them, and you see that growth from the beginning of the movie to what they want to do, to by the end of the movie what they actually did. And I think that they handled that character development and the dreams and everything extremely well. While they do hit you on the head and like really point out the themes really obviously in the movie, there also are some great undertones in the movie, particularly regarding like racism and microaggressions with Sonny, Nina and Benny. For example, they talk about undocumented immigrants, and we see that at the protest, which was a bit obvious, but then we also get that discussion at the park bench with Sonny and Nina, where they're like, I can't even go to college, I didn't know that, and I think that was really great. And then we also have like discussions with Nina and her father at the dinner table, where they're like, you know, I got searched and everything. That scene was so intense. Geez, the actors in that scene killed it. I thought it was incredibly moving in that scene. I mean, you deal with the very like unrealistic, very over-the-top themes in the movie, and like songs and sequences and stuff, but then you also have very real-world scenarios and undertones and political movements and stuff throughout the movie. You see that in things like these, and I think that they handled, you know, telling down-to-earth stories really well, while still having the over-the-top theatrics that we love about musicals so much. And I think that they did that very, very well. Another thing regarding this is that the conflict in this movie doesn't necessarily come from like a physical person. Like there's no stereotypical like villain of the week like in Flash, or there's no one big bad like Thanos. That's obvious, he's a bad guy, they're all fighting him. Whereas the conflict in this movie comes from the actual environment that they are in, such as like the blackouts and the undertones like racism and the microaggressions they experience. And I think that is handled very, very well, and it makes for a very interesting movie where it's not just a bad person and there's no like one-on-one arguments, sort there's very few at least, and it comes from the actual environment and the context of where they are at. And I think that that's great because it allows for a down-to-earth, as I was saying before, a down-to-earth story rather than like an over-the-top villain, which I'm sorry, but most people don't experience day-to-day life. I'm not saying that's bad, I love Marvel, but it's just very cool to see a different take on these villains per se, and you know, the conflict at least, and that, yeah, that was great. And the overall tone in this movie is great, with it being very uplifting and hopeful. Even in dark moments like Abuela's passing, which that scene is extremely emotional, with Nina and Usnavi just crying on that chair. I got extremely emotional in the cinema. But you know, you have those dark moments, but then you also have like very uplifting scenes and some great humorous scenes, like Piragua and the post-credit scene with the banter between him and the truck driver guy. And I love seeing that rivalry between Chris Jackson and Lin-Manuel Miranda. But yeah, so you have these serious moments, but then you also have some very humorous moments, and you have some moments where they're dreaming, they're very hopeful, but then their dreams get slashed and they can no longer dream. But then, you know, it balances these conflicting like tones and themes extremely well, but you still leave the movie not being upset. You still feel energized, you feel that hopefulness that movie portrays, because hope is another thing that this movie portrays. And you know, speaking of the rivalry between Chris Jackson and Lin-Manuel Miranda, I loved seeing him still being in this project and having his time to shine, and they truly represent his legacy extremely well, given that the fact that, you know, he actually created this project along with Kiera. I'm pretty sure I pronounced her name right, I hope so at least. But yeah, and they have him in this movie. I love that he still like was around set and, you know, watching, because it is his little baby, and I think he passed it down, like I was saying before, he passed it down to these people, like to Anthony Ramos, and you just saw that relationship. Yeah, and they do respect his vision while still making it their own in this movie, and I'll talk about the changes later on. But it is true to what he wanted for the movie, obviously, given the fact that he helped create it as well. And John M. Chu really respected his vision. And I also really love the references to Hamilton too, like when Kevin is in the dispatch and he's on the phone and you hear the da 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 da.
Hi, Mr. Rosario?
Yes, I'm here.
So yeah, that was awesome. Now going back to what I was saying before about the tone, you really do feel an extremely great sense of community in the movie, particularly in songs like Breathe, you know, when Nina's walking down the street and everyone looks at her and everyone's like, hey, you're home, and everyone, but she's also like, how do I tell these people that I've known my entire life? At least in that scene, I recognize that, wow, these people all know each other, and you do feel a sense of community. And like in Carnaval del Barrio, and you see that they're all just sitting around, they're all talking, and then Daniela comes in and they all just like lift up and they all dance together, and you just feel, in the words of Anthony Ramos, like an explosion of just Latino energy in this scene. And you really do feel that in that scene. As well as like in the Heights, when they're all dancing, and then everyone comes through the bodega and talks to Usnavi, and they're like, how's your day? And like they all know each other. And of course in 96,000 they all go to the pool together, and they're all checking the lottery tickets because they like all know each other. In all these scenes you feel that they all love and know each other, and I think that especially resonates with me, especially given the year that we've had with the pandemic and, you know, not being able to see people we love. And Lin has said this many times as well, is that you really do feel that this is a very timely movie, and that it really resonates, especially, you know, given the setting and the context of the world we're in right now. It really embodies Washington Heights extremely well. Maybe not so much with the actual the people, as in what they, you know, look like, but it really embodies the spirit of Washington Heights. And I love that it was actually all filmed on location in the setting of like which the story takes place in. I remember Lin saying in interviews that he wanted to film it in Washington Heights, and Universal was like, no, we got to do it like on a lot. And he's like, no, that's not what I want the movie to be. And I think that the fact that Warner Brothers allowed Lin and John M. Chu to film on location really makes you feel as if this is a true community and they all really do know each other that much. Speaking of John M. Chu, his direction really allows the movie to be reinvented and told in a completely different format, while still remaining core to what the musical is about. For example, like the obvious in When the Sun Goes Down, and you see Benny and Nina walking literally on the side of a building. Is that realistic? No! And as I was saying before, it really balances unrealistic moments with very down-to-earth moments. But is this realistic? No. Like, that would never happen in real life. And you couldn't do that on a Broadway stage either. Because, like, how? Because it's all camera tricks, you know what I mean? And, you know, it won't be long now where, you know, Vanessa, says, you know, I look up and the year's gone by and there's literally, like, flags coming down from the sides of buildings and stuff. And Paciencia Faye, where, you know, she's on a deathbed and all of a sudden she's, you know, in this train station and you see all these people surrounding her and the lights, the Puerto Rico, I'm pretty sure it is, a flag represented in lights, all this stuff. You could never do this on Broadway. And John M. Chu takes the vision, as I was saying before, he stays true to the vision, but he tells it in a completely different new light. And I think that is to be 100% applauded by John M. Chu. The settings have changed, like 96,000 under pool as well, which really truly helps the movie to shine in its own right. And I think that that's something that they did really, really well, is that they didn't necessarily make it just a straight copy of the Broadway musical, but it was an adaptation and they made it their own, which is great. So yeah, those are all the things that I absolutely loved about this movie, and I really truly do love that. But there are some complaints I have and some things I didn't necessarily like. So let's move on to the next section, which is the mixed stuff, which is just the stuff that I'm like, about. Anyway, here we go, mixed stuff. So yeah, going back to what I was saying, along with having to adapt, you know, how the story is told, there are some changes to the story itself, which some things benefited the movie, but other things didn't, so they are both positive and negative changes. You know, positive changes include they gave Sonny more of a backstory, and they made him less annoying than he was in the musical, because I felt in the musical he was just like a comedy relief character, and he didn't really have, you know, his own, he didn't stand on his own merit, whereas in this movie they gave him, you know, the backstory of him being an undocumented immigrant, and they gave him a chance to shine, and they gave him a serious tone, which I think that was lacking from the musical, and so I really enjoyed that. They gave Nina dropping out of the university more of a meaning. I mean, I know some people complained that it wasn't as relatable because it wasn't just about finance, it was more racism too, but I personally liked that it made it more feel like an actual real world story. I mean, not that finance isn't a real world story, but it had even more meaning, and I love that about that decision. However, most of the changes are negative, you know, such as removing the backstory of a few characters, or like they removed Intil, I can't pronounce that, Intuil, the song about Kevin's father and how he doesn't want to be like him and a failure and he doesn't want to be useless, and I really felt that was lacking. They moved Paciencia Faye from earlier on in the play where she wins the lottery, and then, you know, it happens just before she dies in this one, because you know, you don't feel that connection to the character until just the last moment, and I feel like that if we established that connection earlier on, it would have been much better. They removed Nina's mother, which you know, didn't have that mediator between the fights of Nina and her father, like you do in a musical, like in that song Enough, when she's like, you know, why stop fighting, Nina, you're annoying, Kevin, I hate you. That song that was removed in the whole character, and I didn't really understand it. There wasn't there was one scene with Kevin and his daughter where they have an argument, but there wasn't enough tension like there is in the musical between the two of them. And they also removed a lot of Benny and Nina's relationship, you know, like Benny trying to impress Kevin by learning Spanish, and you know, like in that song Sunrise, and yeah, they removed a lot of that, and I really felt that was lacking. They added in like extra salon ladies that didn't have any merit. They were just there, and I'm like, why? What is the point of this? And they didn't let Usnavi find out about Abuela winning the lottery until like the very last minute. Like, he didn't use it to pay for Vanessa's apartment like he did in the musical. There wasn't hundreds of stories where Usnavi and Abuela are talking about what are they going to do with all this money. You know, Abuela showing Usnavi the money in I think it's Blackout or the club. Like, you didn't have all that in the movie until like the very last minute, and I probably understand that was to cut some songs and stuff, but it just felt really, I don't know, I didn't really like that. Yeah, and how did he afford Vanessa's apartment then if it wasn't from the lottery money? I don't know. And, you know, they didn't have the crate painted like Abuela. Instead, it was just like a painting of Washington, oh, sorry, not Washington Heights, Dominican Republic at the very back. There wasn't like something to commemorate Abuela. Like, one of the complaints I had while watching the musical was that they kind of forgot about Abuela until the very end. And when they revealed that the crate was, you know, dedicated to Abuela, it made me feel like the payoff to that story or to that scene of her death. However, once Abuela dies, minus Usnavi finding out that she won the lottery, her death is never really referenced to or like commemorated later on in the story, other than in the song when they're all handing candles. I really didn't like that change, not having the crate painted like Abuela, and, you know, Pete, I think his name is, you know, painting it. I felt like that was a very missed opportunity. And the second thing in this section is the idea of Usnavi telling the story to the children at a beach. It came with positive effects in that it was actually awesome to see, and it was an awesome reveal when you found out that it was just what he imagined it to be in his head, and it was actually at the bodega. However, it also felt like kind of a cheap and overused way to narrate the story. Literally Aladdin, Will Smith, the genie, did that to his children on the beach. Or was it on the beach? Not on the ship or something in Aladdin. Like, it's been a very overused technique. It's called the dramatic monologue, I think it's called. I learned this in my drama class. Which is just telling the story to another character within it, and that's how the audience learns about stuff. It's a cheap way. I didn't really like it. However, it did come with positive effects too. So that's all the things in this category. Now let's move on to the final section, which is the bad stuff. Here we go. So yeah, as I was saying before, there are some great characters. However, there were too many, and as a result, it led to there being so many storylines that we couldn't really keep track of them all and properly take them in. It kind of felt all over the place, and there was not one coherent storyline. It was quite convoluted, and there was no one like overarching story. For example, like in the intense moment with Nina and her father, it was extremely intense, and the actors did a great job, and I was very invested and moved. And then they just randomly cut to a club, and then there's a blackout, and then there's Abuela's passing, which had a very emotional scene but doesn't go anywhere afterwards, as I was saying before. Like, they're all separate random things going on in the story. Like, they're all great, don't get me wrong, each story itself, but they don't necessarily tie into the overall movie that well. Like, they're in a club, they're in a pool, then they're at a carnival, but then like Nina's leaving, and there's just like so much going on. I mean, I do understand that this is actual real life. You know, not everything interconnects, and, you know, life isn't just about one character too. I mean, Usnavi is the lead. So I do appreciate that they try to make it realistic, and so I did appreciate that, and I did like that each of these stories did have a payoff towards the end of the movie. However, from a critical point of view, they could have done more to just make everything interconnected rather than a realistic point of view, if that makes sense. Hopefully you understand what I'm saying. And the second complaint is that, as a result, this in turn creates a much longer runtime than needed, cutting out all the unnecessary stuff. For example, I didn't really like the Alejandro character at all. They just had many scenes where they were just in the accounting room or whatever, just talking about how he's going to go to the Dominican Republic, and like how they are going to get Sonny to be a documented immigrant. A lot of that sort of stuff could have been cut down. I personally didn't really like it, and, you know, they could have used that runtime to do Nina and Benny's storyline, which I would have liked more, or completely just cut that runtime altogether just to make it much shorter and make it so it doesn't drag. Like, pacing wise, it wasn't poorly paced. It was very entertaining throughout. It just dragged on a little bit, and I think they could have cut it off quite a bit. But those are really my only two major criticisms with the movie. Now let's just get on to my conclusion. So, in conclusion, like, I know it sounds like I'm being very, very negative by talking about all the negative changes from the musical, and there not being like a single coherent storyline, no runtime, and all sort of stuff. However, I truly did enjoy this movie. The music is great, the characters and actors portraying them are amazing, and the overall sense of community, hope and dreams led to this movie being extremely uplifting and just a fun time at the cinema. Sure, if you may not like musicals that much, this might not be your cup of tea, but I still say to everyone, especially people who do love musicals, to give this movie a chance to win you over. Disregarding the casting controversy, this movie deserves all the praise it is getting critically, and Lin-Manuel Miranda once again proved himself to be a phenomenal playwright and songwriter, and John M. Chu was a great director for this project, and it just proved itself to be another great movie adaptation of a Broadway musical. And I also really loved how they managed to stay true to Lin's vision while still making it their own. Overall, I would give this movie an 8.5 out of 10, and I strongly recommend it to everyone to go and see it in cinemas, biggest screen possible. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope you guys enjoyed it, and if you did, please be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the push notifications so you guys know when I next upload a video. I will be posting my Black Widow review next week, so stay tuned for that. I'm finally back after a long hiatus. I'm back, and I cannot wait to start making videos, hopefully more frequently. But yeah, so be sure to subscribe and obviously turn on the push notifications so you guys know when I do upload my next video. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, that's it. I will see you guys next time. My name is Jordan, and I am out. Bye!